What's up, noobs? Games for me are more than just about the gameplay and the story, but also how beautiful it is. I'm the kind of person who wouldn't play a game if it looks ugly the same way I wouldn't buy a book if the cover is ugly. So my question is the lighting gorgeous? Do I stop and look at the beautiful design and architecture? And do I take hundreds of photos in photo mode? Let's find out if Dragon Age The Veilguard passes the vibe check. Okay, so the opening scene and the grand scale of it is amazing. The lighting, the chaos, the view of the vast city and landscapes, the magical ritual, it just puts the mood on a whole other level. In terms of vibes, they really nailed the intro, and after that I was curious to see if they would be able to keep the level up, and especially because this was already a very intense and grand opening, which makes it easier to wow people. And damn did they do that. I mean, I could even just end the video right here and say that yes, Dragon Age The Veilguard definitely passes the vibe check. I was constantly stopping and looking around and taking pictures in photo mode while playing this game. Everywhere I went, the lighting was not just amazing, but the scenery, the magic, and the grand scale of things was breathtaking. In games, I usually prefer lighting that changes with the time of day for variation, but I think in this instance it actually works that it doesn't. Because every area on this map has their own specific design, lighting, and look that fits into the vibe and feel of each location. And because you are traveling between the areas constantly, you are getting that variation anyway. And I think it kind of adds to the personality of the location as well, and the developers have then been able to really tailor the landscape to make sure it looks perfect in that lighting. So let's break it down into the main locations of the game, starting with the Lighthouse. I love the late afternoon sunlight with the slightly warmer light and long shadows. It gives the area a very soft and warm feel, especially in Harding's room with the light streaking through the windows and the particles in the air is super beautiful. And not to mention the floating stuff and glowing magic makes the whole area extremely magical. Inside, it's slightly less nice. There are some boring dark areas here as well, but I'll forgive them since they put Rook's room underwater. The Arlathan Forest is a damn spectacle. I think this is one of my favorite areas. It's just so magical, and this one actually doesn't have any bad areas. Wherever you go, there's either grand views of ruins and gigantic statues, waterfalls, magic orbs, and floating rocks. And even in the areas that are not as grand, the fall colors of the trees just makes it all look very pretty. The lighting here is also warm afternoon sunlight, but a bit overcast, so it gives it that haziness, which looks really moody and mysterious in the forest. I love that in Minrathous it's raining with that little bit of sun behind the clouds. I think it's the perfect big city vibe, and when you look out on the buildings and city, it looks so grand and awesome. But when you are inside the winding streets of the city itself, I don't think it's that spectacular. I think it's cool that they spruced it up with some glowing magic signs, because even though this lighting looks cool with a view of the skyline, it's a very balanced and neutral lighting, which doesn't make it very interesting when you're in the streets. And the architecture itself is not that inspiring either, so even though Minrathous kind of gives me dreary, big city vibes, I think that's the whole point, so actually they should still get kudos for that. Treviso, on the other hand, I really love. I love that it's always night here, and the glowing lights and lanterns and the impossibly big moon makes it a super romantic and a vibey city. Like, who doesn't want to have a glass of wine in this town? I think the architecture is also very interesting and beautiful with the spires, bridge, canals, and the growing vines that are all over the city. And the way a flock of birds fly off in the distance, this city was just made for romance. I also love how they made the darkness here very blue, so that the warm glow from the lanterns look extra nice. Necropolis, I think, was pretty cool, a bit predictable, but still nice. I think the green lighting definitely brings the eerie, creepy vibes that's fitting for a place like this, and I also like the contrast with the pinkish red. And the Gothic architecture does definitely fit this area. I think it's generally quite atmospheric and mysterious, but it didn't quite wow me like some of the other areas. It was a bit too predictable for my taste, but I did still enjoy walking around haunted mansions and such. I do like that it's surprisingly romantic, like the graveyard with the flowers, lights, and little ghosts are so beautiful. Even though, on the whole, I don't find the necropolis that spectacular, I think the graveyard itself is one of my favorite areas. But Rivain is maybe my least favorite area, and the reason is definitely the lighting and time of day. Sunny blue skies in the middle of the day is really not the most flattering lighting. The shadows tend to get harder and there's just no mood that comes with it. Although it does fit well with the whole beach vibe, and I think they did a good job of softening it so it doesn't look as hard as daylight usually does. I find it interesting that in one of the cut scenes there they made it stormy, as if they knew that daylight isn't really that intriguing. Again, it's not the worst daylight scene I've seen, it just doesn't quite give me that moody vibe which I'm looking for. Another area I really love is this blighted area near the warden camp. The water reflection paired with the misty gray and glowing pink looks super mysterious and dangerous, but also quite beautiful in a way. And I have to say that overall, I really love the design for architecture and landscape. Just look at all the intricate details on the lamps, railings, the statues, and even the walls. It all just looks so damn thought out, and that it was given a lot of love from everyone. I think it's cool that in every cutscene they have taken care to place Rook in the best lighting possible. Like for instance, when Rook wakes up after the ritual, I love the glowy rim lighting in her hair and the glistening eyes. It looks so nice. And it's funny how the lighting on Varric was kinda bland, but that they took extra care to make sure that it's Rook that always looks good. One thing I didn't like so much is that I feel like the whole game is graded a touch too magenta. Like you can see the comparison here where I've graded the bottom row a bit more neutral, and I would even prefer it to be graded slightly more greenish than magenta. But this is just my personal preference and taste, so I wouldn't give it a negative rating for that. But let's address the elephant in the room and talk about overall style and design for the game, which I know got a lot of outrage by fans when the first trailer was released. I've never played the previous Dragon Age games, so personally I like this style, mostly. As I've said, the vibes and lighting are off the charts. I love the grandness, the landscape designs, and the overall magical vibes. I also like that it's slightly soft looking. For me, that gives off a very cinematic feel, and as a movie buff, I love that. But I have to agree on two things. The characters are just slightly a bit too cartoonish for me, like the big eyes and the big heads make them look a bit awkward because I don't think they're exaggerated enough, so it just looks slightly off instead. And the second thing being that it's just a bit too glossy. I would have loved to see a bit more texture in the skin and in materials, because the way it looks now doesn't quite look like an intentional design style, it just looks a bit unfinished or half-assed. I think the whole game is so full of intricate design details, it's disappointing that the characters feel so stripped when it comes to that. I also personally would love some more fun or sexy outfits, as I feel like there are so many similar looking ones, and a lot of them kind of have the same style and colors and not that much variation. But overall, does Dragon Age The Veilguard pass the vibe check? Yes! I think they did a really good job of giving each area their own distinct look in both lighting and design, and the hundreds of pictures I've taken in photo mode is really a testament to that. I have to admit that I might be a tiny bit biased when it comes to the aesthetic of this game, because looking at the intricate details, the windows, the architecture, the artifacts, and generally the overall design, it's fairly obvious to me that they've been inspired by Gothic architecture blended with Art Nouveau. And Art Nouveau just happens to be one of my favorite design epochs. The way it's both organic and intricate, but at the same time also graphic and minimalist is just chef's kiss to me, and I think that blend fits the magic and fantasy of this world perfectly. But what do you think? Anything I missed? That's it. Vanoobie out.